Hey guys, I know there's been a little bit of confusion on the whole um, carbohydrate stuff from this week. I think the reactions seem to be pretty fine. I think those are pretty recognizable for you guys, but it seems like the whole cyclizing and nomenclature and whatnot's a little difficult. So I'm just gonna make this quick video. I'll try not to make it longer than an hour, just kind of covering all that material so that it can kind of be set in stone. And also, I think there's a lot of tricks that are going around that people are using and people are getting confused. I think if you just understand how the tricks work, you'll realize it's actually very trivial. It's actually not that difficult at all. Cool. So we can start with the DNL stuff. So to kind of understand that, I think it just helps to think, to kind of think about it from the perspective of the first guy who did it, Emil Fischer. So Emil Fischer had two sugars. Okay. The simplest sugars possible. Okay. The glyceraldehydes. He had this glyceraldehyde and this one. So this one, if you were to calculate the spin on it, or the R and S, this would be R, and this one, it would be S. And so when you take these sugars and you put them in a polarimeter and you look at their spin, you figure out that the R one has a dextrorotary spin and that the S one has a levatorotary spin. Okay, so these are the simplest sugars. And it turns out that, hey, if the OH is right facing, it is positive or it's dextrorotary. And if it's left facing, it's levatorotary, right? So from here is where the terms D or dextrorotary come from, right? I think everyone seems to understand that part. And L for levatorotary, okay? Because, our simplest sugars that build into the other sugars, they were dextrorotary and levatorotary. So if there's a right-facing OH, we call that D, which is R, and if it's left-facing, we call that L, which is S. Now, if I were to continue to expand on these sugars, right, like if I wanted to build other sugars, which is, typically how sugars are made naturally. Let's say I have this, and I had this, right? We still focus on this center here because that's a center that's derived from the original glyceraldehydes, and we label the sugars D and L based off of that. So that's where DNL come from. That's why we look at that center, is because that center technically is what came from D-glyceraldehyde and L-glyceraldehyde. Now, where things get a little bit non-intuitive is, well, just because a sugar is derived from D or L glyceraldehyde does not mean that it, carries over the dextrorotary or levatorotary part of the name. This is the part that people it's kind of confusing. It's like, hey, yeah, it's derived from it, but that doesn't mean that this always carries forward. So now we actually don't know if this is positive or minus, but we can still say that they are D or L because, hey, look, that stereocenter is that way, right? That stereocenter is that way. One way that I like to tell this story, I spin the tell a little bit differently to kind of help people. I just think of it as this way. The scientists, when they first figured out D and L for glyceraldehyde, they were kind of dumb and they thought that, oh, that must apply to every single sugar then, that if it's right facing, it's dextrorotary, and if it's left facing, it's levatorotary. But it was a mistake that they made, and now we have to pay for it so many years later. People tend to have an easier time remembering that than like, oh, it just builds on it, blah, blah, blah. So if you can remember it that way, that works. Whatever works for you, you can do that. This is how I remember it, okay? So sugars that are D and L, for sure, so I guess the way to think about it is that for sure, if a sugar is D, it will definitely mean that that highest stereocenter is R. That is for sure, right? Same thing with L. If we say sugar is L, that stereocenter is definitely S. But that does not always mean that it is dextrorotary, and that does not always mean that it is levatorotary, okay? I mean, this can be true for glyceraldehyde, right? Both of these statements, but cannot be true for other sugars, because again, if you don't know, how would you know, right? We don't have a polarimeter on the exam, so not much we can say there, okay? So that's where D and L come from, and that will come into play a little bit later when we talk about how to identify sugars once we cyclize them. But that's also another thing, right? Is that not only can we, identify sugars in their linear form, like whether they're D and L, but we can also cyclize them too, right? Sugars spend most of their time cyclized anyways. And so I know you were taught in class a certain procedure, right? A certain protocol on how to do cyclizations. I personally don't like it. It takes too long. I like my method better. So I'll teach you guys my method. If you have your own method or you like Leibniz's method, by all means, you can use it. I'm just showing you mine because right, it's my method and I like it. Cool. So my method just works like this. Carbon 2 is always going to be the carbonyl. So if this is 2, then this is 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay, and so if this is carbon 6, this alcohol is 1, and this alcohol cyclizes onto carbon 2. Okay, so if this is a 6-membered ring, it's going to look something like this. Okay, you can always draw it better than I can for sure. My God, there we go. That's good enough. Okay, 6-membered ring, and we get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, just like that. Okay, carbon 2 was the carbonyl, so we don't really know where in space the OH will be from that carbonyl. So for right now, we'll just put a squiggly line. Squiggly line just means that we don't know where it is in space. It's just there, right? It can be up or down. We'll come back to how we can determine what that is, or a term we can use for that. But then after that, 3, 4, and 5, we can tell where they are in space. As long as this is a D sugar, then we can say that an OH on the left is up and an OH on the right is down. Okay, so this is on the right, so it's down. So on the left, it's up, and on the right, it is down. So that would just mean for carbon 3, where the bonds look like this, right? It's down, so it's over here. For carbon 4, where the bonds look like this, it is up, so it is here. For carbon 5, where the bonds look like this, it is down, so it is here. Okay, and then we get to carbon 6. Now, be careful here, right? You might think, oh, this OH is down, so I should put a down OH here, right? But keep in mind, right, that OH is the cyclizing OH. So if this OH does a cyclization, it's not this O that's going to come off of carbon 6. That's this guy here. That's 1, right? So everything below this group, right, this carbon 6, should be the group that comes off of carbon 6. Okay, so in this case, the CH2OH. And so if this OH was supposed to face down, but it did the cyclization, then that must mean that this CH2OH that's also on the same carbon is going to be up, right? They can't be both in the same space, right? This is down, this is up. They can't be in the same space. I couldn't say that they're both down. That wouldn't make any sense. So CH2OH must be up, and that's why when we see these two bonds here, right, it's going to be on this up bond, the CH2OH. Oh, sorry, not like that, like this. Oh wait, no, that was right. Sorry, I'm I'm being weird. Okay, cool. All right, so that's how you can cyclize sugars pretty quickly. And one thing you'll notice is that this here is a D sugar. And when the highest stereocenter does a cyclization, right, if that stereocenter is D, right, or it's R, so that's two things we can say is it's D or it's R, then the CH2OH is up. So this is a common symptom of D sugars. Okay, so one of those tricks that you can use for, hey, how do I know something's a D or L sugar without having to open it up and doing all that weird, like figuring out what structure it is? Well, hey, if there is a CH2OH on that carbon 6, right, we know, or really any carb, like this carbon here before the, let me put it this way, if the high stereocenter does the cyclization, okay, such that CH2OH is coming off of the end there, right, we can use that as a signal for whether it's D or L. Right? A D sugar would look like this. If you wanted to see an L sugar, it would look something like this, right? I won't show in all the groups, but L sugar would have something down there like that, right? Because it's down. So if it were down, that must mean that this OH would have to have been up, which means that it must have been on the left side. Okay, cool. All right, so that's one way that we can cyclize sugars and how we can tell, hey, a sugar is D or L just by looking at the cyclic form. Okay. We can also cyclize that sugar a little bit earlier. And what I mean by earlier is that we can do, we can call this 2, 3, 4, and then 5, and then cyclize to make a 5-membered ring where this is oxygen 1, right? So that cyclizes instead. Okay, so we make a 5-membered ring here. Okay, so this is the furanose form. And then we can count here, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. Once again, right, carbon 2 is the carbonyl carbon. So it's like whether it's up or down is kind of up in the air. So I'll just put a squiggly line for now, right? We don't have to worry about that. But for 3, 4, and 5, right, we can kind of tell where they are in space. OH is down, OH is up. And then we could say this is down too, I guess. So for 3, it's down. So like, it would be here. For 4, it's up. It would be here, right? And then once again, right, 5 is the cyclizing OH. So we're not going to put an OH that's down here. That wouldn't make sense. This is that O in the first place. So instead, everything below this carbon 5 is going to be the group that falls off of that carbon 5. So in this case, that's going to be this OH CH2OH. And again, if this OH should have been down, then this group must be up. That group must be up. So it'll be up here like this. Okay. Now, this is a chiral center, so we do have to give some chirality to it, just to help you guys track that in case it's hard to see what that is. This carbon here is this carbon here. And again, this is a right-facing OH. We could say it's D, but we can also say that it's R, right? R is more useful for this because you put stereochem. One thing that I like to do is I just, if I don't know whether it's R, S, if it's wedge or dash, I just make it a wedge and then I do the stereochemistry to see if it works out. OH is always 1, ring is 2, and this OH is 3, 1, 2 to 3, that's R. So we know that if it looks like this is gonna work out, okay? Let's say that it didn't work out, we can just turn this into a dash and it'll be correct, okay? Cool. So this is our D sugar. Now, one thing to be very careful of, right? Before, where we had this guy here and we said, hey, if there's a CH2OH pointing up on this carbon, right, that's a D sugar. Do not mistake that for this scenario here, right? This rule here only works because the cyclizing oxygen was that high stereocenter. So I'll go back here for a second, right? It was this oxygen that did the cyclization. Because this oxygen had to have been facing down, or it's D, right? This group has to be up, right? If the DL oxygen is doing the cyclization, of course, we're going to have a telegraph CH2OH, right? That's why that works, is because it's always the group that falls off there. But in this case, right, the DL oxygen is actually off the chain here. So we're no longer concerned about what this carbon tells us. That carbon tells us nothing, right? Because it's just dependent on what carbon 5 was in this case. I mean, carbon 5 could have easily have been on the other side, right? I just did glucose. What if I just did this sugar here, right? Then this would just be facing down, right? This would just be down here, right? And then again, we can do this. So this would be 1, this would be 2, this would be 3, right? That is not clockwise, right? That is counterclockwise. So this would have to be a dash. Okay, because then that reverses the spin like that. Okay, and so you can see already just by switching that carbon 5, this is such a different scenario, right? But it's still a D sugar. So we don't care in this case about carbon 5, so that's not the final stereocenter. We care about the guy that's hanging off the chain with the stereochemistry. Okay, so this is a case where you'd want to do the stereochemistry just to see if it's D or R, D or L, sorry. So in this case is R, so we know that this is a D sugar. And again, don't just assume that if it's a wedge, it's a D sugar. That's also not going to work, right? We just saw an example where if I switch that, right, if I switch this carbon 5 group, the way it is right now, then this will be down here, right? And now if it's a dash, now it is a D sugar, right? So be careful, be careful. Cool. So those are 2 scenarios of how you can cyclize a sugar. There is one last scenario that's worth talking about to kind of understand how this cyclization works. So we will go ahead and do it. Okay, cool. So let's say that we have this scenario here. And oh, I kind of gave it away. Oh, actually, no, I did not. I messed up. Let's see. So 2, 3, 4, 5, and then 6. And then this cyclizes here. Okay, so this is going to be a 6-membered ring. Okay, and we're cyclizing with the CH2OH. A lot of people seem to think that you can only cyclize with these guys. Just remember, hemiisotopes don't care how you form them as long as it's from an OH and a carbonyl. Everything else is fine. So it's okay that we're using this to cyclize. That's totally okay. But this is 1, 2. Oh, sorry, this is 2, 3, 4, 5. Wait, oh, sorry. I missed this one. 3, 4, 5, and 6. Okay. Again, carbon 2 is the carbonyl carbon, and we have not talked yet about how we know if this is up or down. So we'll just put this somewhere in space. 3 is down, 4 is up, and 5 is down. So 3 would look like this. So it's gonna look like this. 4 is up, so it looks like this. 5 is down, so it looks like this. Okay. And then carbon 6 is a CH2. So if carbon 6 is CH2, right, that means that there's just going to be 2 H's here. We can just keep that empty, right? H's, we never have to draw in H's, right? Like we never really draw in CH bonds. Okay, so this is a scenario where if the CH2OH is cyclizing, we get like an empty carbon for 6. And so now people tend to panic because they're like, oh, how do I tell D and L, right? Well, remember, we always want to pay attention to the highest stereocenter, in this case, carbon 5. So when we look at carbon 5, remember, if it's on the right, it's down, and if it's on the left, it's up. So whether this is up or down, we will know immediately if it's D or L. And in this case, it is a D sugar because it's down. On the other hand, if this were up, just like this, we would know that it's an L sugar. Okay, a D sugar and an L sugar. Okay, cool. So those are our little tips and tricks on how we can figure out if something is D or L. And again, the three main scenarios are when we have a CH2OH on that final carbon, right? If it's pointing up, it's D, and if it's pointing down, it's L. Keep in mind, this is not exclusive to pyranoses, right? As long as there's a CH2OH, right? Like for example, in this case, right? This is a CH2OH in a furanose form, and whether this is up or down will also still tell us if it's a D or L sugar, right? If it's up, it's a D sugar, and if it's down, it's an L sugar. Okay, so don't think that it's, sorry if I give the impression that's only the pyranoses. I know I haven't really done any pyranoses, but pyranose and furanose can both have this kind of idea. Right? Same thing here as well, right? If we have the final stereocenter outside of the ring, that's totally fine too. We just have to do this is the only time where you really have to do R and S to figure it out. But again, if it's R, it's D, if it's S, it's L, so not too bad. Again, this is also the case where, if we have a 6-membered ring, this could also happen. Like imagine if we had something like this. This would be a real pain to do. So I hope you don't get something like this, but you can kind of tell, I think this would be R, right? That would be R. So hopefully you never have to deal with something like that, but it is totally possible. And then finally, right, again, if we have a CH2OH, right, doing the cyclization, or that final carbon is empty, right? Again, in the furanose form is the same thing, right? Whether this OH is up or down will tell you if it's a D or L. Okay, so in this case, right, we have a down OH, so it's D. This case too, right? This guy is down, so it's D, right? This guy is up, so it's L. Cool. So those are the main cyclizations to kind of understand. I think once you kind of see this and you kind of internalize it, it's like, oh, now all those tricks kind of make sense, right? How we know that something is a D or L sugar based on those. So that's always a nice little thing. The last little bit here is the whole alpha beta debacle, right? What is alpha beta? Why is it that I've never really specified, right, where the OH is in space? So to kind of help you understand what alpha beta is, it really helps to have the 4 different versions of sugars that we could have, okay? So if we have a D sugar, there's 2 versions of this D sugar that we could have. There is this one. Oh, sorry, not D sugar. So this is the D sugar, and this is the L sugar. Oh, shoot, sorry, I'm tripping on my own words. Let me say this again. So there's 2 forms of D sugars that we can have. That was correct the first time. We can have this one, and we can have this one. Okay, and then there's 2 forms of L sugars that we can have. Okay, there is this one. And this one here. Oof, that's a tough one. Let me draw this out first, and then I'll kind of throw this on the side there like that. Oh, that's not an L sugar. I am being an idiot. Okay, this is an L sugar. There we go. Cool. Okay, sorry about any confusion there. So these are the 4 types of sugars that we can have. And what you'll notice is that the CH2OH and the OH in both examples kind of different, right? So in this case, the CH2OH is up here, and we kind of talked about, hey, that's like our symptom for a D sugar. If it's down, that's our symptom for an L sugar. And the other thing is that on the anomeric carbon, on that carbonyl carbon that's cyclized, that carbon 2, the OH can be up or down, right? Up or down. Now, the whole alpha beta system was derived so that no matter what perspective you took on a sugar, you could identify what kind of sugar it was based on the relationship between CH2OH and OH. Okay, this is where the alpha beta system comes into play. So if the CH2OH and OH are cis to each other, we call this a beta. We call this a beta. That's what beta means. I know that a lot of people have internalized that beta just means up. And for the longest time, I actually used to teach it this way too, because that's what I thought it was, until ironically, a student last year that I was tutoring for Liebens told me, hey, actually, that's not what it is at all. It's actually that these two are on the same base. They are cis, so it's beta. Okay, so if OH and CH2OH are both up, that is a beta ring. Okay, same thing with same thing with this one here, right? This CH2OH is down and this OH is down. That is cis, so these are beta. Okay, so you can see D and L sugars then have opposite beta faces, right? Or like, the whole up and down is kind of switched for them. On the other hand, I don't know why I drew in these H's to be honest, but on the other hand, right, if they are trans to each other, so let's say that we have this up OH, but then we have this down OH, right? That is when we have alpha. That's what alpha is. So in the same case here, right, this is up and this is down. I know these both look like they're like facing the same way, but they're not, right? This is actually a down bond, or sorry, this is an up bond and that CH2OH is down. So this is trans, so they're also alpha. So this is where the whole alpha beta idea comes from. And again, it's so that no matter what perspective you're given of the sugar, you can still accurately describe whether it is alpha or beta, right? That's why we don't always focus on the OHs here. Now, I know that this can be a very difficult topic, especially since, again, we already covered two cyclizations where, like for this one example, or this one where there's not a CH2OH flying off the end there. So how can we tell? Well, a good little rule of thumb is that for D sugars, we'll just say that if the OH, the anomeric OH is up, it's beta, and if its anomeric OH is down, it's alpha, okay? And then we'll just flip it for L sugars, okay? So in this case, anomeric OH is up, so it's alpha, and then anomeric OH is down, so it's beta. Okay, so that's something you can just write on a note card and you can use it really well. I find it a little surprising that this wasn't covered in lecture because again, I got schooled on this because a student said it was mentioned in lecture. So don't feel too bad if this was like a confusing thing. It was supposed to be told to you guys. Cool. So that's how alpha beta works and how cyclizations work in general. I hope this was helpful. If there's anything else you guys need help with, just let me know. You guys know where to find me. Cool. All right, you guys have a good one.